I'm Bob Bradley. This is THE 101, Introduction to Theater and Drama Arts. My guest today is Beth Domann. It's rather appropriate that this is the last interview that I'll be doing because in many ways Beth will draw together, at least in her career, she has drawn together all of the many various strains that we have talked about during this semester. She is an actor, a stand-up comedian, a director, a children's theater educator, and now is the artistic/education director at Springfield Little Theater at the Landers. So we can see how then with Beth that in many ways we are going to sort of come to an end and let's talk to someone who has really done all of these many things. I suppose the one thing you may not have done, have you ever designed sets? Have you been a visual designer?
Not that we'd want to talk about.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I have input, but you don't really want me doing that. It's pretty scary, actually.
All right. In all of these mostly performance-oriented or in some cases education-oriented tasks in the theater that you have done, when and where did you first start? How did you get attracted to these things?
I started in 8th grade, actually, by taking a speech class.
Well, that was only yesterday.
I know, it was, I know. Isn't it amazing? I've done so much since then. But Mrs. Moore at Hickory Hills got me started in speech. And so I started doing stuff there. I did a little show called Let George Do It. How terrifying is that? And I played George Washington. Oh my gosh. With my unibrow. Had a unibrow. And that was my trick, to raise my eyebrows. And started making people laugh, which is really fun. And then I did the 8th grade banquet, did stand-up, and of course terrorized the teachers. And I just kept doing stuff as much as I could from that point on through high school, and worked with Tim Reynolds at Glendale as my drama teacher. And Ann Quinn, Monroe's Quinn's daughter, was our student teacher, and she got me in down at the Landers. And I just kept doing shows. And I knew in 8th grade that's what I wanted to do. There wasn't a question. Because I was really shy as a kid. And I guess I got dropped on my head at some point in 8th grade, probably playing basketball. And so that's when I started to do it.
All right. Okay. What was, after you left college, where did you go and what did you do at that point?
Well,
so to go out and earn a living now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, wasn't that scary?
Yeah,
because you just expect to go out there and it's, whee, everybody wants to hire you. But I taught for the summer at Stevens. I taught publicity.
At Stevens College in
Columbia.
Right.
I graduated, and then I spent the summer there doing the Stevens Theater Institute as the PR. I was the PR director.
This is the one in Iowa?
No, this is the one that's up in Columbia.
Oh, okay.
Your first year, you do the Stevens Theater Institute, and the second year, you go to Okoboji.
Yeah, okay.
So I did that and really enjoyed it, and I thought, okay, now where do I want to go? And I didn't really want to do New York, because there's a lot of really tall people there, and I'm very short. So didn't really want to do Chicago. And Dallas I had friends there, and it was really, the theater there was really going crazy because of the oil boom. And lots of little theaters were opening up. And I went down, visited, and had a blast, and thought, well, I want to be here. So that's where I went. And I really kind of lucked out because I lived in this really great apartment building and got in with a couple of guys who were really good friends with the lead director in Dallas, Kyle McLaren, at the time. And I started doing shows.
Which theater was he working, or did he?
Kyle he worked in every theater.
Oh, he was freelance, okay.
He did freelance stuff all over the place.
Right.
So I did a show called Vous Carré for him as the stage manager. And then he couldn't find anybody, so I ended up playing Nursey also. That was interesting. And we just started working together all the time, and it was kind of a fluke, really. And then I got in with a couple other people, one of the leading playwrights in Dallas, and did shows with him. And kind of started acting again as a fluke. And then I got in with another guy doing stand-up. So I started doing some more stand-up. Then I got in with Theater Gemini and did some directing for them and some acting. And, just hitting the pavement, getting my name out there as much as I could, it was fun. It was a good time. So I started auditioning, started directing, started doing stand-up, and did a lot of free stuff before I started actually making money. So just working jobs wherever I could, waiting tables.
I was going to say, did you have a day job?
Oh, yeah, at the Dallas Palace. I was a waitress.
All
Yeah,
right.
how terrifying was that? And worked as an office manager, did whatever I could to pay the bills. Yeah, so worked in a lot of different counties, worked in courthouses, and did that kind of thing. And then theater at night. And there'd be times we'd be doing 5 shows at a time. It was, but we were young and insane and could do that then. Survive on 2 hours of sleep. But, yeah, just hoofed it a lot. And, and plus it's real important to be easy to get along with. That's a big thing, to have a good attitude and be willing to do just about anything. And I was and did. So that's what I did in Dallas and got to work with a lot of different people.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was fun.
And you were talking about being both an actor and a stand-up comedian. How do you find that those two relate to each other, or how do you use them, and how do you move from one to the other, or?
Well, stand-up is kind of different in the fact that it's just you. You're the one that it's sink or swim time, but it makes you think on your feet. So anytime you're in a performance with somebody that might blank out, or if I blank out, which has happened upon occasion, I think last week, you just have to go with it. You just have to play and be willing to really interact with people. And you do that as a stand-up because you're interacting with your audience. You never really know what they're going to throw out at you, but that's what makes it kind of fun. And so as an actor, when you're working with other actors, it's just about listening and reacting to what's going on around you. So it helps a lot, I find. Of course, any time you're doing comedies, that helps, just as far as the timing goes and that kind of stuff. But it also helps with drama, too.
As a stand-up comedian, now you write your own material.
Oh, yeah.
So you're writing and developing your own material. Yeah. So that's another one of these strains, because we did talk to playwrights and at some point during the semester. So where does your material come from? How do you start in developing this stand-up routine?
Well, my stuff comes through life. I don't really do jokes. I think I did a joke one time when I was doing a gig here for lawyers, and I think that was the last joke I ever told, and I can't remember him since. It was, yeah. Whew, I was sweating that night, let me tell you.
When you're saying jokes, you mean something with a punchline type thing?
Yeah. 2 men walked into a bar, 1 ducked. I don't do stuff like that. I use stuff in my life, because most of it's not, they're just like, that is crazy. So I travel, and I like to travel a lot. So, that's just an incredible wealth right there, just of things that happen to me when I travel. Just things that I think are funny. Pantyhose, I think are funny. So I use like a whole routine on pantyhose.
Let's see, I don't think we could put that on the air.
Yeah, just getting them on is a process. So I just take everyday things and just kind of twist it a little bit. And that's what I think is fun. So I listen to people. I'll sit around and I'll listen to conversations and things that people think are funny, and just take things like that. And just kind of torque it just a little bit.
Do you create a persona as a stand-up comedian, or is it just you, or does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I have a bunch of characters that I do. Like one of them, for instance, I was watching QVC one day, and I heard this voice, and she talked kind of like this. And so she was selling pillows. And I thought, that is hysterical. And I never saw her. You just saw the person that was smashing the pillows. And that's their job. They just smash pillows and fluff them, smash them and fluff them. And this lady just kept talking about it. Yeah, doggone it. These are fabulous pillows. These are incredible. We're going to sell these to you today, for $49.95. We're going to get you 6 pillows. And so I thought, what a great voice. I have to steal this. So I just kept listening to her. And I thought, she's got to be 40, 50 years old. And she was probably 20, 25 with this big hair and big nails. I thought, that is a great character. So I stole it. And so I do this QVC lady. So in my show, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just get an item from the audience and I'll sell it. And it could be anything. It could be a watch, it could be a ring, it could be glasses. But you can't sell it as glasses. It has to be something different. You have to make it something else to make it interesting. So that's what I do. So I'll take characters, I'll make up characters and do things like that. And then sometimes it's just me. So when I did the show at the Vandervoort, that was just me. But I'd love to do just a night of different characters that I've got. Because that's really fun and exciting to come up with lots of different quirky people.
Do you write these down? Do you actually write them down, or do you just sort of stick them all in your memory?
Yeah, I just put it in my head. Maybe I'm Sybil, and I don't know. That's it, I'm Sybil. I write down keywords, like bad hair, and then I'll just take that and I'll go off that. I'll write down pantyhose, and I'll just do a whole thing on pantyhose, just kind of whatever comes to my head. I mean, there's just so much, just as far as vacations go. When I went to Belize and almost died cave tubing, that's, while it wasn't funny at the time, it's funny now, as my friends went whizzing by me and didn't even realize. But yeah, just things like that. So I'll write down just a keyword, and I'll know what that means, and I'll go with that.
When you begin your stand-up routine, at that point, do you know where it's going?
No.
Or you just you have a starting point?
I have a starting point.
You've pretty much decided a starting point. And then after that, it's a
free-for-all. Now, a lot of comedians work it very differently. They do stuff in 3-minute and 5-minute segments. That doesn't work very well with me because I do a lot of improv and a lot of interacting with people. So I just kind of go with whatever pops into my head. I kind of like that fear thing, that I don't know where this is going to go, but let's find out.
It gets your adrenaline going.
It does get my adrenaline. Fear does wonders, doesn't it? Maybe I should jump out of an airplane sometime.
There you go.
Yeah, probably end up on the back of it, stuck to it, but that's all right.
Now, I think you've already said, but you carry these qualities over into your acting. But when you begin working on a scripted character, okay, let's go that way. When you begin working on a scripted character, what do you do? Where do you begin?
Feet. I always begin with the feet. I begin with the feet and the walk. I find the feet and the walk, and then I find the voice for the character. And then I just physicalize that.
So this is what in acting jargon we call, this is an outside approach. You start outside, whereas some actors start inside with the emotions or whatever. Okay, so you find the body.
I find the body first. That helps me more than anything. I find the body, I find the quirks, I find the movement, I find where does this character live in my body? How does it live in my body? What is, how do I hold myself? So, yeah, I work from the outside in. A lot of people work from the inside out, but I work outside in.
Do you find how in going from the external or from the outside, do you find that these physical conditions eventually lead you into some kind of emotion or whatever? How does that connection work? Do you even know?
Yeah, well, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, right.
Really, sometimes it just kind of happens, and then sometimes once you get to the emotional level of stuff, I find that it changes the physical a little bit. Like I might change the walk just a little bit. I might change my voice just a little bit. in Peter Pan, which I'm doing right now, I'm playing Smee the pirate. Well, I was doing this one voice, but it wasn't kicking. I had the body, but I couldn't. The voice, I was not happy with the voice, and so what we did is I just added a mustache, and so I went from being an English pirate to a French pirate. Just, I think preview night, I totally changed it.
Yeah.
Which totally changed the demeanor of the character. But it's a lot more fun. It finally started clicking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. So, yeah, I just keep playing until I find what fits for me. Yeah.
Okay. Have you done intense drama rather than, because everything we're talking about is you as a comedian or working from a comedy standpoint. What do you do if you're working in a more intense form or serious? Maybe that's a better word.
Right. I really enjoy drama, and I didn't when I was younger. I really didn't enjoy it, but I love it now. It's such another level, and I really have fun with that. I got in trouble so much in college because they were like, you can walk across the stage and make people laugh, but you might want to think about doing something serious. And I'm like, but why? It's like algebra. Who needs it? But I did. I started really experiencing that, and I did that in Dallas. I did a show. Well, I did up in college. I did the Shadow Box. How not funny is that script?
All
So yeah, I did.
Well, there
that.
are some funny parts.
There's some funny
yeah.
parts. There's some funny parts, but yeah, I was playing
But
a
yeah,
doctor.
but a show about dying is
Yeah, it's kind of, most people don't go, oh, funny, ha ha. So I did that, and then I did last summer at Bluefish Cove down in Dallas, and several other pretty, well, in Bucharest, that's pretty heavy. But I really enjoyed that. It's different. The timing is different for drama. Because with comedy, you've got to hit that crest, and you got to feel that peak and ride that. And with drama, you find that and you bring it down, and then you bring it. It's just a different, it's a different ride. It's real interesting.
And now, how did you move into directing? You said that you did some directing in Dallas. So how did you move to directing?
Well, my emphasis in college was directing, and so when I moved to Dallas, I was doing a lot of stage management because that's just kind of a natural progression. And so I started doing that, and it was at Theater Gemini in Dallas. They needed a director, and I said, hey, I'd love to do it. And so I got the opportunity, and I just started directing for them quite a bit. So that's what I did, and I would do things for little theaters around there, the Dallas area. And then when I came back to Springfield, McDeniston gave me the opportunity over at the Landers to direct some stuff, so I took it, and that's how I got back into that.
When you are directing, well, okay, where do you start? Obviously the script, but in working on the script, where do you go?
I like to find the relationships. I like to start with your relationships. What is everybody's relationship to each other? And then
You mean the characters within the play?
The character's relationship, right.
Okay.
Then I like to start, next I like to go into production and find out, okay, as far as our sets, what are we looking at? How do we think this is going to work in relation? So then we start getting into the physical. Now if it's a musical, it's a little different because if it's a straight show, depending upon the type of show, like musicals, we have to think about music and the dance, how much room do we have to move? So what is the set going to be doing and that kind of stuff, and that's going to affect relationships and that kind of thing. But I really love breaking down the script into, because like a musical, it's not just about singing, it's about telling a story, and so I like to treat each song as its own monologue and really start getting that across. Because you don't just sing to sing, you sing to tell the story, to further the story. And so I like to get that going. And then the relationship that people have with each other.
Do you find that, being a very talented performer, being a performer and having a great deal of experience in performing, how does that affect you as a director? Or
Yeah. um,
or does it? I mean,
well, I love for performers to find their way, to find their little things, and then sometimes, you know, kind of steer them in different directions. Yeah, it's interesting sometimes because some characters you go, oh man, isn't that a character you've always wanted to get your teeth into, and to let people find stuff. But I love that when people really go for it and find those weird little nuances, just those little things. And that's what I think is fun as a director, is to help somebody find that and to go, okay, well, that was an interesting choice. Why don't we try it this way and kind of sneak it in here and find those little things that just make that character pop instead of making the obvious choice. I think it's fun to go not for the obvious. Then sometimes you slap them with it.
So you try to work, I think from what you're saying, mostly as a kind of guide as a director, rather than maybe, well, let me ask another question. Do you ever ask actors to copy you in some way or the other as a director? Or...
Yeah, if push comes to shove and I'm not eventually getting what I need or what, yeah, isn't that horrible? Yeah, that goes against all the rules. But yeah, sometimes if we're just getting down to it, it's like, okay. Now, I would probably do that more with some of my younger performers that don't have a lot of experience. But a lot of times, you know, more experienced performers, they'll get there eventually on their own. You know, especially, you know, and casting. Casting is a lot of it. And I know as a performer, I love for somebody to go, you know, why don't you just play and see what you can find, and then let's take and move things around and weed as we need to. And then sometimes I'm like, I have no idea. I don't even know what this line means. Please enlighten me, because I don't get it, and I've tried it every way and it still is not working. So then it's like, just tell me how you want it, because I have no idea. So I think it's give and take as a director and a performer to allow people to find stuff, but then also help them get there. And I love directors that do that with me, too. And I've given directors a couple gray hairs sometimes, because you know, learning lines anymore isn't as easy as it used to be, is it? So
I want to back up, because you said something which sort of reminded me of really something I don't think I've touched on during this semester, and that is, you said you worked as a stage manager.
Yeah.
And I don't think at anywhere during this entire semester we've talked about stage managers, and I think maybe that at least we may talk just briefly about who is a stage manager, what does a stage manager do, and where do stage managers fit into this overall process of creating theater. So let's go back and talk about, you said you were a stage manager, so what did you do? Explain.
Well, what I did is I worked very closely with the directors, and be there on book, write down all the blocking, make sure everybody...
So you really start out as a kind of an assistant to the director. Right.
So I would, when I was working with Kyle, so I would make sure that I did all the cast lists. I would contact everybody, make sure everybody's at rehearsal. If they were late, call them. Hey, bad. But I really made sure that Kyle had everything he needed and the actors had everything that they needed. And then I would write down all the blocking. So once we had it blocked, if everybody wasn't doing what they needed to do, then I was there on book going, wait a minute, you need to be crossing downstage right, because that's where we need to go. Or if they yell line, make sure that you're giving them the line and that kind of stuff.
Maybe we should say, just to avoid, because in case technically they don't understand, when you're saying writing down blocking, what in this case you're talking about, of course, is that by whatever means, and there are many ways in which one can devise how characters are moving around on stage, but at some point you begin to say, well, this is where the character is going to move every time. And this is written down in a copy of the script, so that thereafter you, a stage manager, are responsible then for seeing that the actor remembers this.
Right.
Yeah.
And write down the props that they use. So I would have to make sure that all the props are where they need to be, because you may come off stage right and you've got to pick up a glass of water. Well, it's got to always be there. And so really it would be my job to make sure that that's there, that the prop people had done what they needed. And yes, actors are supposed to check their props, but we all know how that works sometimes. And I'm probably the worst at that. Make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And so, yes, in the blocking, they may need to be downstage left because somebody's going to have to run into them. So you have to make sure that everything always happens. So you do that. You're also the person that people come to if there's a problem. You are the voice of reason. The stage manager is the person that is the voice of reason, that is gentle yet firm, and make sure everything is running smoothly. That's the job.
And I think sometimes you find, well, because of whatever the theatrical hierarchy may be, most actors, however well they may know a director, still have some hesitation in going to a director.
Sure.
But you're more their peer, you're more equal to them, and so at that point they can come to you and talk about, maybe there's something they just don't understand, but they don't want, let's put it this, they don't want the director to think they're dumb.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to go appear too dumb to this director.
Exactly, yeah, I have no idea what that word is. Yeah, and the stage manager is that person that does that. And then also calls the show. So it gives all the light cues, sound cues.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, calls the show mean, okay, once you get into dress rehearsals and into performances, then you become the chief.
Right. Yeah, you call the
as
whole
stage
thing.
manager.
Right.
And so at that point, you then make sure, and there are various ways in which it is done. The most obvious one is you literally stand backstage someplace where you can see the stage, and at that point, you then literally, if it's a headset, speak into it and tell the lighting operator when to do this, the sound operator to do this, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, you give all the standbys and the goes, and that's how all that comes together. And so, and if something goes wrong, you're the one that has to make the decision on how are we going to fix this, what's going to happen if there was a problem backstage. You would be the person that does all this. So you really get to have your fingers in everything, which makes perfect sense to then go into directing, because as a director, you have to have your fingers in everything. And as a stage manager, once the director's gone, because a lot of times once the show opens, the directors, they're off to the next project, then you make sure that the show is running the way that the director said it. And sometimes you have to tell actors, ha-ha, funny, funny joke, but that's not the way it works, and
right,
we're
and
going to
you
keep
are,
it clean.
And especially in the commercial theater, you are, or in fact in any theater, but as any theater that has any kind of long runs, we'll put it that way, where there's going to be a repetition over a long period of time, you are responsible for the quality of that production and seeing that it stays up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's your job. And so you have to make sure that you do that. You have to make sure that if you've got swing people, that they're ready to go, that they know what they're doing and that kind of stuff.
Again, you say, okay, maybe swing people. Swing people or understudies. Of some kind, if for any reason an understudy has to go on, then you have to be sure that that understudy is fully prepared and ready to go.
Right. We've all done shows where somebody had to come on as an understudy role and that kind of stuff that wasn't necessarily prepared. I saw a dance concert one time, and this poor gal, I mean, everybody was leaping to the right, and she was going to the left. It was like a Carol Burnett skit, And she's wearing toe shoes and whacking people in the head, and all the little fairy dancers. You couldn't have planned it better. That absolutely the opposite happened every single time.
You mean you don't think that was the actual dance?
No, it really wasn't. But it was. I don't think I've ever laughed that hard in my entire life. It was absolutely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But she quit dancing after that. I think was so embarrassed that she wasn't prepared. And, well, it should have been. I mean, it really was not the cool thing to do. Kind of ruined the show, but it was entertaining.
And then of course in the commercial theater, frequently if there are replacements, and by that meaning if one actor leaves the role and a new actor comes in to take that role over, it is the stage manager who will rehearse the individual. And there may be even, I would say, usually there may be one rehearsal in which then everybody will come back in and rehearse with that individual before the individual actually goes on.
Yeah, help them out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the stage manager, again, is responsible for carrying that on.
Yeah. It's really the coordinator. I mean, and you know, the stage manager, you have a stage manager box. So if somebody forgets a pencil, you've got a pencil. If somebody needs a Band-Aid, you've got a Band-Aid. Somebody gets sick, you've got Tylenol, you've got whatever you need.
Right.
And yeah, you make sure that spike tape, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you make sure that you've got all that stuff and are ready to go. It prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely prepared for anything. Yeah. It's really fun. It's a fun thing to do. I'm glad I got to do that because it keeps you really on top of everything. And I think in theater you need to have experience in every aspect, whether it's lighting or building props or costumes, which you really don't want me doing costumes, but like, how about some duct tape? But it really makes you appreciate everything and to know how to do that in case of an emergency and to be able to find your light. I mean, there's so many actors that have absolutely no idea how to find their light on stage because they've never hung or focused a light. Well, you know, they're over there standing in the dark. It's like, you know, 3 feet to the left and you'd be in it. So, yeah, I'm fortunate that I've gotten to do all of that.
Well, one of the, certainly, what we said was that you are now working in a managerial post, so you have all of this other experience behind you, and it's still continuing it, but you also find yourself in a kind of certainly a different, looking at it from a different way, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you do then in your managerial post?
Yeah.
Besides doing what nobody else wants to do.
Exactly. Yeah. You make sure. Yeah. You do all the stuff nobody wants to do. Well, it is called show business, and so you have to look at it as a business. And budgets. That's a big deal. Because artistically, we all want to just go wee and make things pretty and spend money, but you really have to watch the bottom line and make sure that it's a viable way to do that. Look at ways to cut costs and make it all work. You know, it's not cheap to put on shows. So,
how, in your particular case, how do you go about preparing a budget for a show? Where do you start in just trying to get the figures together?
Well, first of all, when we pick the shows, we look at, that's one of the first things we do is we get quotes on what the royalties will be. So that's a good start. We pretty well know what our design fees and that's pretty standard. We know that.
Let me say again, I don't know, this is one of these things that I don't think that I've talked about during the semester, but that is certainly, well, Shakespeare is in public domain.
Yeah.
But most, or certainly many of the properties that you are going to be selecting and be doing, those particular shows are in copyright.
Right.
And so in order to do them, you must write to somebody, which in most cases is a leasing company of some kind, who handles the rights for the original creators. And so you must then ask them to give you a quotation as to how much it is going to cost you in royalties to produce this.
Right.
And royalty quotations are going to be based on usually, is it professional or non-professional? And
Right.
in your case, you're going to be doing non-professional rights. But they still want to know the number of seats in your theater.
Oh, yeah.
They want to know how much are your tickets going to cost, and some other viable figures of that nature. And then at that point, the leasing company will then return to you and say, this is what it's going to cost you to do this particular production. So again, this is an expense I think that most people, the audience, probably never thinks about.
Right.
That you do have to pay through some means the original creators of this, or the estate of the creator. You have to pay these people a royalty.
Oh, yeah.
You have to get permission and you have to pay for it. It's only right because this is an artistic property which has been created, and if you're going to use that artistic property, then yes, you should pay for the right for it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And these days, and I've forgotten, the copyright law keeps changing, but I think these days, well, in the United States, most material is going to remain in copyright, is it 50 years after the death of the last creator?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So essentially what we're thinking about, well, let's put it this way. You can think in terms of, let's say if the material was written in 1920, for probably 100 years, it's going to be 2020 or somewhere close to that before that material will finally pass into what's called public domain.
Right.
Now, once it passes into public domain, no more royalties.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
But in the same token, if you're looking at Shakespeare, and then you go, okay, we may not have to pay royalties on that, but look at the costumes.
Yeah, right. There are going to be other things that are going to balance out here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got the costumes, and you've got just the weapons, because there's not a lot of places that just have a bunch of swords lying around,
Right.
so then you have to rent that kind of stuff, and that's expensive. I mean, it adds up real quickly. So those are a lot of things we have to look at.
Right. So anyway, I'm sorry to digress from the top. I'm very good at digressions. But I did want it because I think, I know it's a point that I had not covered during the semester, and that audiences do need to realize that you, as a producer, have to pay for the materials that you are now going to perform. So we start with so in constructing a budget. Now we're back on track.
Right.
You're going to find out what are your royalties going to be,
Right.
and then where do you go from
And
there?
then from royalties, and depending upon the show, royalties could be anywhere from, if it's a straight show, maybe $1,000, to some of the big musicals, you're looking at $12,000 just for the royalties. So then what we do is that, let's just take a musical. So we look at the royalties and we go, okay, that's going to cost us this. Then we have to look at the costumes for it. How many of those costumes do we have? What's the period of it? The styles, that kind of thing. Do we have anything in our costume shop that we can try to pull? Are we going to have to rent certain things? If we're going to have to build it, how much is that going to cost? So then we have to look at that budget. Then we have to look at how many sets does this have? Do we have anything that we could use to kind of do that? So then we have to figure out what our set budget is. Right now, just the other day, wood just doubled in price. So everything that we did for this year as far as budgets on sets, we have to rework that because the price of wood, because of the hurricane and all of it going to the war, has doubled the price of wood here. So that hurts us, so we have to come up with alternatives. So we look at all those different things, and we put it all together, and then we come up with a budget. But there's a lot that goes into it. You have to think about your lighting. Do we need any special lighting for it? Do we need any kind of special sound effects? Do we want dry ice? Because if you think about dry ice, then how much dry ice do you need? Well, that's costs a lot.
Again, we should say in most cases you're going to use dry ice in order to create
Fog. Yeah,
right.
low-lying fog.
Right.
It's really kind of cool. So like for Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
That's a stage effect.
Yeah, it's a
right.
stage effect. You're like, no, I got to have fog, you know. We could use the squirty fog, but that just makes you cough and goes up in the air. So sometimes you want that low-lying fog.
Right.
But you have to then figure in dry ice costs and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of weird little things you have to think about. Do you have any specialized makeup? Do we need wigs? How much are wigs going to cost? Because I know a good wig is anywhere from $50 to $100. So if you've got a whole period piece where everybody's in wigs, you better hope they have long hair.
Oh, and another thing, again, which I think people don't think about, and that is you have to buy scripts.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
for musicals, you may sometimes rent, but what they're charging you for rent is about the same as what it would cost you if you were buying them. So it's
Sure.
but you, again, you have to pay for those
Oh,
materials.
yeah.
And I'll just simply say, I know unfortunate people these days, oh, well, you can just Xerox it. No,
No.
that is illegal.
Yeah, that is illegal. And when you apply and you get the rights,
Right.
that's in the contract that you have to buy
Right.
your scripts, and you have to buy so many scripts because they're on to people Xeroxing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just, you know what, it's easier too. So if you figure you're Xeroxing, you're still paying 3 cents a page. Just buy the script. It's easier. It's faster.
Right, but yes, again, that is, I think, an expense that many
Yeah.
people don't realize. And if you have a large cast,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
have 30 people in a cast of, well, let's say, one of the largest shows I can think of, Man Who Came to Dinner,
Yeah.
and at that point, a script is going to cost you maybe $6.
Yeah.
So at that point, and plus you have to have, of course, scripts for all of your tech people and the various people backstage. So we're now talking in terms of something more than $200 just to buy the scripts that you need.
Oh, yeah. Which most people don't even consider that.
Right.
And if you've got a musical, then you're paying your musicians also.
Right.
So orchestra costs, which of course they're musicians, they've worked very hard and diligently, they deserve to be paid. You bet. So you have to figure that in. And that's why some of the big musicals anymore, you just don't see a big orchestra of 25 people anymore. Well, plus our pit, we couldn't put 25 people in there anymore. But, you have to think, okay, how many can I feasibly, that we can get a good full sound, 11, 15 people. So people aren't sitting on top of each
Right,
other
yeah.
down there. They do get a little upset when that trombone thing's bashed them in the head. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to consider. And then you figure...
And let me say, how much of this did you ever really think of before you got into this position that you're in now?
Oh, are you kidding? I was doing shows with the education program, and they're like, here's $1, and I put a show on.
Yeah.
I was doing sets for $10, and I could do it for a lot less, but you just don't even really think about how, okay, now I need a backdrop. Or my psych just got ripped, and I got to have $1,500 to get a new psych, and things like that just, it adds up so quickly. And just a blank drop, that's $300 that you just go, that'll take your set budget just right through the roof there. And but it's fun. It's fun doing that and figuring it all out and making it work, hopefully.
And now as a manager, what other eye-opening experiences did you get that you had not?
Yeah, dealing with people, isn't that a treat? Yeah, you have to deal with people, and it's, we deal with a lot of volunteers and that kind of stuff, which is fun. Sometimes with designers, and you have to go, I know you want that, and I think it's beautiful too, but it's just not feasible. And try to get people to work within the budget and work within reason, because, well, for instance, we closed Peter Pan this Sunday, and we opened Dirty Works at the Crossroads on Thursday. So we have 3 days to totally do a show. And we do that 3 times a year, that the turnaround is like that. So it's pretty insane, but it's fun. So we really have to make sure the designers and everybody are really working together to make sure that all happens in a timely manner and cost efficiently. So, and sometimes things don't work out, and you have to part as friends and say thanks, but I'm going to have to go this way with it.
Right.
So that's hard sometimes, but that's life.
What, in assuming administrative responsibilities, what's been the most difficult, for you personally, what's sort of been the most difficult adjustment that you've had to make?
Gosh. I think just keeping your finger on everything that is required. Just making sure all drawings are in, everybody's got what they need, Contracts, getting contracts out all the time. That is a pickle to get contracts specifically and that kind of stuff. Just the small little details you just don't even think about that you just at the last minute go, oh, we didn't order toilet paper. That's a bad thing. We've got 500 people in here. We need toilet paper. Just weird things like that you just have to go take care of. That, yeah, just slip through the cracks and that kind of thing. That's been little minute things have been tough. Because volunteers, I love the volunteers. We get along, and that's a great thing. I've always enjoyed that part. But little weird details that just wouldn't even think about. That's been the toughest thing for me.
In becoming a manager or administrator, in becoming an administrator, you in many ways had to move into what we sometimes call the left brain.
Yeah.
You had to move into the left brain and use left brain functions, and whereas just in simplistic terms we think of the artistic decisions as being one which are going to be right-brained, and that the seat of our creativity lies in the right brain. But what did you discover, what kind of relationships do you have between what you're doing in administration, and could you use your creativity there in some way, or how did you draw on your creativity? Or
Oh, that's good. Well, I work with Chris Volkmer, who does all the financial stuff and is our chief of staff. And she calls me paper challenged, and I am paper challenged. And that was really, probably that was the biggest thing I had to overcome, is just reports and because that's just, so I have to make a game of it. I have to make charts, and I have to do colors. And so the calendar, because I'm in charge of the calendar, so the calendar, everything is color coded, so it's pretty. And it's got lots of colors on it and that kind of stuff.
Oh, so you're using your visual sense.
My visual, I'm very visual, and I have to do that, so that it's interesting to me.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just, it's so boring. So I have lots of colored magic markers, and I go in there and I color things, and then I know, because it's like, okay, all blue, that's rentals. Yellow, that's our shows. So everything, it's pretty, and then people can see it and it pops out at them. So I use a lot of my creative stuff in other aspects. I have to, otherwise I think I'd go nuts. Plus, just crunching numbers sometimes, you have to get pretty creative. You have to go, okay, I've only got $100 to spend on props. I need $500, but I've only got $100. How can I make this work? And I need shepherd's crooks. How am I going to get 20 shepherd's crooks for $10? And so you have to get real creative on how to do that. So that's fun. That's a good challenge to me. I like that kind of stuff.
What kind of what kind of directing skills did you find, or have you found, carry over into your administrative work?
Well, getting people to do what you need them to do in the way you need them to do it helps a lot. And listening to people, listen to them, listen to what they have to say. That's the best thing I think that we're doing now, is that we work as a team, and everybody listens to everybody, and everybody has responsibility and is held accountable in their area. And so we really try to work with each other on that. And I think that's probably helped me the most, as far as being able to listen to people, being able to talk to them, seeing where their strengths are, using that, going, okay, you're paper challenged too, we don't need to work together on this project, but we both love craft, let's go do that. And using the strengths, really, I think is probably the best thing I've got going for me.
In a newspaper article that I read about you and the work you were doing at Springfield Little Theater, You were talking about that you had drawn on Jack Stack's The Great Game of Business.
Oh, yeah.
What, can you be specific as to sort of what you have taken there?
Well, yeah, what we do is that it is about business. It's about, we have a product and we need to sell that product. And we need to do it in a fun way where people are having a good time, that they're challenged, that they have a voice and take responsibility for their area. And so that's what we implemented, is The Great Game of Business. And it is wonderful. If you haven't ever read the book, you need to read it because it's wonderful. And it really empowers people. And sometimes I think that was probably, when I look back on my life, some of those frustrating things is being held responsible, but not having the power to change it. So what we do is give people the power to change things and listen to them and say, how can we do this? How can we make it better? How can we get people down here? How can we make volunteering a fun thing to do? And what can we do to reward people and reward not only the volunteers, but the staff and the board? And so that's what we do, is we just try to make it fun for people and give them a responsibility.
And this comes out of some of the material that you read in...
Yeah, and we got to go do The Great Game of Business. That was really fun. That was really interesting, yeah. The Stacks have been incredibly supportive of us, so it's been a great thing. And it's also important to have a board of directors that allow us to do what we want to do and how we need to do it. So,
well, I want to thank you for being here.
Well, thank
and
you.
for having a wonderful hour.
Yeah, this was
and
fun.
for helping me bring together all of these various things we've talked about, and showing how, in a very practical way, and yet also still using your creativity, that you have been able to create theater and be a part of theater and have a thoroughly wonderful time doing it.